I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Re-animator.
Before we get started today, just a quick shout out to our friends at the 10-ish podcast. This is a comedy and entertainment podcast discussing and breaking down a top 10 list every week in real time, including highest grossing films, worst US presidents, deadliest animals, best-selling video games, and most visited websites. This is a great podcast for people who love lists, and please go give it a listen. They're a great group of people doing a lot of great things. All right, so the Re-animator.
Yeah, I chose the movie. It was my choice. I decided to choose a classic horror movie, all-time classic, 1985, directed by Stuart Gordon, written by Dennis Paoli, based on an H.P. Lovecraft story. This is the first in actually a trilogy that Stuart Gordon and Paoli would do of H.P. Lovecraft movies. This movie, From Beyond, and 2001's Dagon. This is Stuart Gordon's first feature film.
So the Re-animator, very loosely based off the H.P. Lovecraft story. It kind of starts the same and then goes off in a whole different direction. But it's sort of your classic Frankenstein-style myth where you got this guy, mad scientist. He wants to bring people back to life, and he's convinced that he can do it. And everyone's like, dude, you're crazy. He's like, I'm going to do it anyways. And of course, as he starts bringing people back to life, it doesn't turn out the way he wants it to.
Yep, you're right. It's based off an H.P. Lovecraft story, very loosely though. Herbert West, the mad scientist character, I think is pretty much one of the, if not the only, consistent character or thing in the short story. I haven't read the short stories, but yeah, that's pretty much, I think, the idea. Not to spoil anything, but I love them. I love Re-animator. I've seen it many times. It's hilarious. The effects are amazing, and the acting is characteristically very good, I think, as well. Gordon's experience in theater is, I think, an interesting thing that kind of adds to the movie as well.
It feels very much like, I don't want to say a filmed play because it feels very much like a film, but you can very much see the theatrical aspects, especially in the way he lights things. There's very harsh lighting, very harsh shadows, and it feels very, I don't know what the right word for this is. I don't know. It feels,
I think the acting for me is the most theatrical element of it. There's something about the way that the way that the actors interact and the way that they, I guess, emote, I guess feels somewhat theatrical to me. I think with that element, it sort of kind of transforms it into just any other B movie into a very, very successful B movie. You know what I mean? I love B movies. I love B horror movies. I think they're some of the greatest movies in the world. But sometimes they have shitty acting in them. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how they are. But this movie characteristically has great acting. I think everyone in it is very, very good. And every character too has incredible arcs. Every single character has incredible, great arcs that are done. I think each one is done perfectly, and the way that characters interact with each other, each different combination, it definitely feels very elevated.
and the way the film starts off, I mean, they just get right into it. Like, they don't wait a single second.
But this opening scene, this scene was shot the very last when they made the movie, because I decided to go all out and I bought the Arrow Video Re-animator Blu-ray because I wanted to own it. It was just this one of my favorite movies. I have to own it. And I watched some of the extra specials on it, including a documentary about the making of it from the mid 2000s. And Brian Usna, who's also a horror film director, he's one of the producers on the movie, directed tons of famous movies, including Brian Usna also directed both sequels to Re-animator. He said that we have to have this opening scene because we need to be right up front with the audience about what the movie is all about. So they filmed that after the fact.
Yeah. So that wasn't the original opening. Like, they were done, and they,
I don't think there was an opening. I'm guessing that the movie just has the credit sequence and then the movie continues how it's supposed to, continue.
I mean, it definitely adds a whole another element, and it just has this sort of frantic insanity going on, because it's just you see an opening of a hospital of some kind, unclear what kind of hospital. Immediately you just know that something is wrong. Things don't look right. They're freaking out. Someone's, you hear yelling and screaming, and they're all asking where this guy is, some professor, doctor person, and they all run to the door, and they run inside, and there is one of our main characters, Herbert West. I love Herbert West. Herbert West is the best.
Played by Jeffrey Combs, one of the finest actors. He's incredible in the movie.
So incredible. Incredible performance. And he's freaking out because his professor is very much dead, but he's also not dead.
He reanimated him, like the movie title. I love that when he his eyes explode and it gushes blood all over everyone. It's hilarious.
So gross.
Everyone's like yelling and screaming. Like that woman, he yells, it's like, you killed him. He's like, I did not. I gave him life. His line deliveries in the movie are so funny. They're so good. And yeah, that kind of, like we talked about, really sets up the movie for like how like crazy and violent and bloody and kind of just like all around like you described it as manic.
So then we meet our other main protagonist, who's a student a doctor to be of some kind. He's like soon to be a surgeon, right? Dan?
Yeah, Dan Kane.
And everyone loves him.
Yeah, Miskatonic University.
Where is that?
In Arkham, Massachusetts. I'm guessing it's made up or some shit like that. I have the Wikipedia in front of me. Yeah, Miskatonic University. Yeah, he's a medical student, and once again, his introduction is also perfect. Perfect introduction, where he's working on a patient, and they're giving the patient CPR. They're giving it what is that called?
Shock thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why the name is eluding me, but yeah, they're trying to. This person is like dead, and the doctor that he's with is like, okay, she's dead. By the way, that doctor, Stuart Gordon's wife.
Really? That's dope.
They actually, she ends up in a lot of more Stuart Gordon movies later on. They both started a famous theater company in Chicago. He worked there for 15 years before he started making movies. So he and his wife actually got arrested when they were students in Wisconsin because they did a production of Peter Pan that had like nude people in it. They got arrested for that. This is like the 60s. Because I mean, Gordon, he directed the movie when he was 38. Yeah, he's so good. I know, yeah, good for him. And then, but he kind of got like he got pinched out of the theater because there was like a board attached to the theater from like that were like had like different community members, and they're like, oh, you shouldn't do a horror movie. And he's like, whatever. And he left. And after that, he just did movies, I think, from that point forward and other stuff. Actually, Re-animator in like the 2000s, I think they made a Re-animator musical. So there's that, I guess. Anyway, the doctor is like, yeah, she's dead. And then Dan's like, no, we can still like save her. And he's like, no, I'm sorry. But like, I appreciate that you're doing your best, but like, you have to learn how to quit. So like, we know right up front that Dan, he's a nice guy, like you said. He doesn't like when his patients die. Like he's upset the fact that like he can't save certain patients right away. We know this.
We sure do. Dan's just an all-around good guy who just wants the best for the world. He's just trying to do his thing.
He's got a girlfriend.
Sure does. Who is the daughter of the head of the university, or?
Yeah, she's the daughter of the dean. Yeah, Dean Halsey.
Very scandalous.
I know. Played by Barbara Crampton, who was also amazing in the movie. Barbara Crampton is in a lot of horror movies, and she's very good. Yeah, Dan, we get his introduction. We get Dean Halsey's introduction. We get also the introduction of this is all like happens very quickly, but it's really great. We get the introduction of Dr. Hill. I think when we're introduced to him, he's using his laser on a dead cadaver or something like that.
Yeah, they're in the morgue, and they pass the security guard, who, by the way, one of my favorite characters in the movie. Security guard, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, every character is good. Yeah, he's hilarious.
And Dan has to put a body in the morgue for, I guess they're dead. Oh, it's the same dead person. It's the person that's dead. And he's all sad, and he pushed in the morgue. And there's that moment where like the hand of one of the other corpses like falls out, and he keeps like trying to push it back, and it just keeps falling out, which is a nice little foreshadowing of sorts. I enjoyed it. I was expecting a kind of the Return of the Living Dead sort of situation in this movie, where like all the people in the morgue come to life, which of course isn't what happens, but
No, that is what happens.
kind of.
Sort of. They kind of do come back to life. We'll talk about it once we get to that part. But yeah, like the Re-animator juice sort of turns people back to life. Kind of like it does, like it almost turns them into like it doesn't really turn them back to life. It more like gives them life again, but instead of being who they were before, they're now like a crazy animal, basically, is what happens. They're like more aggressive. But we'll get to that later. We meet Dr. Hill. He's evil.
Him and Herbert West do not get along at all. They hate each other.
I love their interactions in the movie. I love like right away, Herbert West is introduced to Dr. Hill, and right away, Herbert West is like, Dr. Hill. Well, you ripped off my previous teacher, Dr. Hans Gruber. In fact, it's plagiarized in Europe. And he like right away, he's completely like, Herbert West does not care. Like right away, he's like antagonistic to Dr. Hill because, I mean, Herbert West is right. Dr. Hill is a fraud.
Yep. Herbert West is perhaps the most aggressive medical student to have ever existed. He doesn't give a shit. He just drops truth bombs.
He's so good. I love the scene when they're in class too. Another classic scene. Even like the effects when Dr. Hill is working on like the skull and like the brain look really good, by the way.
Yeah.
Like that's just kind of like the anatomical stuff. Like it's not really like the horror stuff. But even that stuff like looks really good. Dr. Hill's talking about like his theory about brain death or whatever, which Herbert West doesn't agree with, and he keeps like snapping pencils.
So angry about his pencils. It's so ridiculous.
Mr. West. And he's like, Mr. West, may I suggest you get a pen?
A pen.
Great dialogue. Perfect dialogue. I like that actor who plays Dr. Hill, by the way. He has an incredible look. He kind of, they say, Stuart Gordon says in the doc that he's kind of has like a Boris Karloff thing going on. Really good. Dan, like he's dating Barbara Crampton. They're having a sexual relationship. I like the poster above his bed, the Talking Heads poster. Of course. Mwah.
Perfect. The perfect foreshadowing moment. Just perfect.
Oh, it's too like, and that guy would have that poster. You know what I mean? Like in real life, like it's not even like it's not that far fetched.
Exactly.
Dan, Herbert West visits Dan because Dan needs a roommate, and Herbert West is like, "Yes, I would love to stay here." And Barbara Crampton's like freaked out by him, and he's like, "Do you have a basement?" He's like, "Yeah, we have a basement." Oh, okay, cool. It's like, why does he want a basement?
He gets really turned on by the basement. He's like really excited.
Yeah, he loves the basement. He loves it. Yeah, because he's raring to go in there. I think Herbert's living there, and Barbara Crampton is just like, Herbert's kind of weird, huh, Dan? And Dan's like, yeah, I guess. Like she's totally freaked out by him. We don't get the cat scene, but I think you get the pre-cat scene where Barbara Crampton finds the dead cat, right?
Yeah. Does that happen before or after? There's also around this time, there's that dinner scene.
Oh, right. The dinner scene, I think, goes right before that. They have a little dinner.
Dr. Hill showing his true creepiness. I mean, up to this point, like, you don't like Dr. Hill, but you're not necessarily against him. But at this point, he comes on full creep, like, very quickly.
Yes, he's very interested in Dean Halsey's daughter. You can tell right away.
Gross. He's like a 60-year-old man, and she's like 18. Maybe 20. It's gross.
And of course, Barbara Crampton is not interested.
Shocker.
By the way, one kind of interesting thing about the movie that they cut out, one of the things that about Dr. Hill that they cut out that they kind of show later in the movie is that Dr. Hill has the ability to hypnotize people.
What?
And so there is a deleted scene that shows him hypnotizing the dean at the dinner.
Oh, shit.
Do you remember that scene where like he's like holding his head to the window and he's like trying to talk to the dean through the window as if he can see him? It's because he has him hypnotized.
That makes sense.
Part of me is like, yeah, that would have been nice to know. But then again,
yeah,
I still love the movie just the way it is. Like it's perfect. The way that the movie is just sequenced. I feel like adding just any other like extra scene just would feel off to me at this point. I mean, but it is a little confusing when you're just kind of like, how is he able to, control that person or that, it's because he has the ability to hypnotize people. Another random tangent for you.
But he's creeping. He be creeping. And then the dead cat in the refrigerator.
Which is great. Herbert West is like, "What are you doing in there?" And they're like, "What the fuck? Like, why is there a dead cat in the fridge?" And he's like, he says something along the lines of like, I already found him like that. He's like, Dan's like, "Why didn't you tell him?"
Yeah, he was already dead.
He was already dead. And Dan's like, "Why didn't you tell me like earlier? Like what the fuck?" And he's and Herbert's like, "What was I supposed to do? Leave a note? Cat dead, details later." It's so funny when he says like cat dead, details later. That's such a funny ass line. And they're like, okay. They kind of move on from it quickly, I think. They're just kind of like freaked out. They're like, why the fuck?
Do you think he killed the cat, or do you think it really died of suffocation?
It's a good question. I've never really thought about it. I guess he probably killed it. He's a bad liar. Saying like, he suffocated.
You think he killed it?
Cats are pretty dumb. They get themselves into dumb situations, but I mean, I don't know. It's possible.
Suffocation via trash can? It's possible. But he doesn't seem to have the best morals, so hard to say.
No, he doesn't give a fuck. I think after that, you just get like we just get the experiment scene, right? With the cat in the basement, yeah. Which is that whole scene's great. It's a lovely scene.
It's so creepy. It's because Dan's asleep. He's doing his thing, and he hears these like screams, just like these terrible, awful screeching screams, and Dan runs down to the basement. And Herbert West is just like moving all around. He's thrashing, and there's this like black, what you assume to be the cat, just like attached very much to him. And
it's obviously like a doll.
Very, yes.
You know what I mean? Like a piece of fabric. And he's like, Jeffrey Combs, he just sells it so much. Like he's flailing her. He's so good.
It's certainly not understated by any means.
Not at all.
And he slams the cat right against the wall. I mean, just head first. And then they beat it with a bat a couple of times too. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, and they do a good job with this scene too, because they do this thing where they kind of like almost like they pan the camera around the basement as the two of them are kind of like listening to where the cat is going. You know what I mean? Which is pretty good sound design. You know, they just kind of have like this cat's, you know, just random cat noises like here and there, but you never actually see a cat the whole scene, at least in the scene where the cat is like running around like kind of all the shit in the basement. Yeah, that scene's like really, really funny because they're like throwing around like bats and stuff and breaking things. And I think that concludes when like the cat like attacks Dan's face and they're able to, you know, yeah, like you said, beat it.
Pretty brutal. And of course, Herbert West is like, "It's your cat. It was your cat." And Dan's like, "It can't be my cat. My cat's dead."
And he's like, "Well, look at this. I have this thing called a reagent, some green goop."
They use the stuff that they use in those little like
and glow sticks.
Glow sticks. It's the first movie to use glow sticks. Fun fact for you.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah, to use glow sticks, they just like broke them and poured them in there.
Whatever works.
It works. It makes total sense. It's a very green movie.
Sure is.
Like the lighting will be green. And like the glow stick goo is green. And Wes is like, "All right, look at this. Like the cat is dead. Its back is broken. Check this out." And he inserts and he puts the glow stick goo in the cat. It comes back to life.
It's insane.
And I think Dan says something like, "Why is it so mad?" And he says like, "Birth is always painful," or something like that. Like I said, the goop doesn't really bring him back to life. It essentially turns them into zombies, but very like aggressive zombies.
And then they kill the cat again.
Yeah, they do it again
for a second time or a third time.
Yeah, for the third time. Yeah, this poor cat, it just keeps getting killed and brought back to life, all in the name of science. I love the scene after that where Dan is in the dean's office. That scene's sad.
It's such a sad scene. All he's trying to do is he's trying to explain what's going on. He's just like, "Look, here's what happened." And that's it. And the dean is a total asshole about it for no real reason. I mean, other than just, I don't know, I think he's an asshole about it. He's like, "You're suspended," and Herbert West immediately banned from, I mean, I get Herbert West has never been like perfect, but it seems a little extreme to just fuck everyone over, I guess.
Of course, it's the daughter thing. He's dating his daughter and all that shit. And yeah, but he's just like, "We're going to take away your scholarships or whatever to school." And he's like, "You're going to take away my scholarships?" Dan's an interesting character because I think if the movie just had Herbert in it, I like Dan because we can relate to him very much. and Herbert is almost like a comical character. He's great and he's amazing in the movie. But Dan's great because he's a very grounded character who wants to do the right thing and who works hard. You know what I mean? Like he's completely normal guy with very normal like wishes and desires. But he has to help out Herbert, who's totally weird with his experiments that he's kind of interested in because he's like, yeah, like that would be kind of nice to like not have, people die, he's a great character.
The position Dan is in is a very morally complicated one, and Dan certainly seems to be the moral compass of the film, where Herbert West is just absolutely off the wall and just doesn't give a shit and does whatever it takes to get people back to life. I think Dan is someone who kind of reins Herbert in and tries to be the voice of reason of sorts, but at the same time, he believes in what Herbert's doing, and so he has this weird contradiction of wanting to do what's morally right, but also knowing that in the name of science, sometimes you have to do things that are a little complicated. And so I think where the tension often comes isn't so much from Herbert, because Herbert doesn't give a shit what happens to him. Like he just does whatever the hell he wants. He doesn't care about the consequences. But the reason there's tension there is because Dan very much does. Dan very much wants to be a doctor. He very much wants to do what's the right thing. And so to be conflicted by doing the right thing and also what's good in the long term and the conflicts of science, it makes for a very relatable and complicated character.
They kind of they kind of touch on it in the second movie a little bit. Like there's literally dialogue where they kind of make the distinction that like Dan is a doctor, but West is a scientist. Makes the most sense, I think. I mean, Herbert is like a mad scientist, he's completely like, off the wall, like we talked about. But yeah, I think that makes sense. It's a good distinction.
But Herbert, despite all that, has convinced Dan to break into the morgue,
Break in, yeah.
even though he was just warned, like, you're on suspension, all that shit, you're gonna lose your scholarship. Dan's like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm doing this for the love of my people, because I just gotta do what I gotta do. And they break into the morgue.
Love the morgue scene. Love the morgue scene. Yeah, they break in and they're like, they have all these like fresh bodies because I think the fresher the body, the better. I watched a Bride of Re-animator for the first time. Not a bad movie, pretty good. In that movie, it has this stupid thing where they discover that separate limbs have different consciousness. It's ridiculous. It's even more ridiculous in this movie. But in this movie, they're like, we need a fresh body that has like basically like a brain that's still is mostly formed, that's somewhat fresh. While they're looking at all the bodies, Dean Halsey is onto them and he's with his daughter Megan. And I like Megan Halsey a lot. I like how like she's not like a ditzy character. She's like kind of like the visceral reaction to the horrible stuff going on, that you kind of like need in a horror movie like this. If she wasn't there, you wouldn't have that kind of like over the top like screaming and reaction that kind of that is warranted, so I like her. But yeah, like I said, Dean Halsey is onto them and they're trying to find like a corpse to put their juice into.
And they're looking and they're looking and they're looking, and they finally come across someone who has very recently died of heart failure, which I guess is one of the few things that they can use it for. It seems like the reagent really isn't all that useful because it can only be used on people who have literally just died of very particular circumstances, and it doesn't seem to work very well either. But I guess that's science.
Yeah, they're trying to experiment. Yeah, it's like bodies that still have like a working brain and are really the only ones that they can do. And yeah, they find a body that's that, like you said, like it's ready to go. And I think they insert the juice, but it takes a while to get going.
I love Dan's reaction to this whole thing because for some reason Herbert has decided Dan's the one who has to record it on this little like tape recorder, and Dan is like freak the fuck out. Like he's terrified not only that it will be reanimated, but also that he's gonna get in trouble or lose his scholarship or all that shit. And you can just see him like visibly shaking through the whole scene. And Herbert West, calm, cool, collected, he's just getting this shit done.
The body that they inject in the morgue. I don't know his name, but that guy had I believe, a career for a little while, being a Schwarzenegger body double, because he's a really big, tall, muscular guy that they reanimate.
He's a very big man.
And Dean Halsey's like pounding on the door because they know that they're in there. And then the guy wakes up the reanimated corpse, and he busts down the door and he jumps on Dean Halsey, who's under the door. Proceeded, you get this crazy scene where he just beats the hell out of Dean Halsey. Well, yeah, and they kill the Dean. He's dead. And I think they kill the corpse with the bone saw, which looks crazy.
Yeah, they just run it right through his heart. It's fucking insane.
Ooh. That scene is crazy where they go like through his chest. That looks really good. You can kind of like almost kind of like see where like it's obviously not his real chest, you know what I mean? Like they put a fake chest, and I think they put like a arm underneath like that, but it's very effective. Like everything is very effective in the movie.
Very good. It's just absolutely insane.
And then of course West is like, Dean Halsey just died, we gotta it's a fresh body. Oh, it's so funny when he's like, we have to do it, let's do it right now. And they do it, but he's a zombie, like he's nothing going on. And Megan runs in, and everybody is like in shock. And I like the scene where Dan, like, he's like laying on the floor and he's totally in shock, like he's totally freaking out. And Wes goes over to him, he's like, it's okay, don't worry. And he takes his recorder out and puts it into his shirt. He's like, don't worry about it.
I love it. I love the part of the scene where the corpse is still murdering the Dean, and the security guard comes back from like lunch or something, and he sees what's going on and he immediately just walks away.
I love the security guard. This movie is like has very little sets. I don't know if I doubt it was filmed in an actual hospital.
Probably not.
You just have like the morgue and like the hallway and the elevator, and then you kind of have that like one, like you only see at the very beginning and the very end, but like the rooms with all the hospital rooms and stuff, and then like a couple people's houses. And that's pretty much all you get.
But that's when Dr. Hill figures out what's going on, right? And he confronts Herbert, right?
Yeah, well, I think first they said the fact that Hill has Dean Halsey in like his little room. He's like, Megan, if there's anything that you need, let me know. He's so good.
So creepy. So creepy.
And he's basically just like, I don't know what's wrong with the Dean, but I'll help, I'll fix him, for you, I love you, he's he's just being creepy. And yeah, like you said, Dr. Hill confronts West about his discovery.
And Dr. Hill is pure evil, pure evil. He's like, I want all the credit. This is all me. You're going to tell me exactly how to do this,
or you'll go to jail.
Yeah, you're going to go to jail. Herbert West's like, no, you can't. This is my baby. This is everything I've worked so hard for. And then he murders Dr. Hill.
Yeah. He's like busy looking at something through a microscope, and he hits him in the head with a shovel, and then he decapitates him with it.
It's pretty brutal. But then, of course, being Herbert West, immediately reanimates him. What a terrible idea. You just murdered this man.
Of course. I like that too. I like the scene where he's like, he gets his head and he puts in the tray, and it keeps falling over. So he gets that one like spiky thing that you put notes in to like make it stand up. Another great physical comedy thing, just really good. And yeah, like you said, he can't help himself. He's like, I wonder what would happen if I did this. And he's, talking to Dr. Hill's head, which from this point on, Dr. Hill's head and Dr. Hill's body are basically two separate characters. They might as well be. They're so good. I love it. It's just like what they did was they put like a big tray around him and have like goop all in the tray, all the blood and shit in the tray. His body, which West, didn't account for, knocks West out, and he's able to get out of the basement.
To continue on his evil plan of taking over the world, I guess. It's not really clear what his plan is.
He wants to be rich and famous, and at the end of the day, he really just wants Megan, right? Like, that's really what he wants. And yeah, like we said, he has the ability to like control reanimated corpses telepathically, and also give them brain surgery to basically lobotomize them as well. And I think like you get a couple scenes where like Megan and Dan are like talking, and Megan is, she's freaking out,
Understandably.
They discover that her dad has basically been lobotomized, which he was basically already lobotomized, but he's more fucked up because he has like a scar on his forehead that was obviously from like Dr. Hill's laser. So all he did was lobotomize him, and they're like, this sucks.
Yeah, because I guess if you lobotomize them, they're easier to hypnotize is the thing I think he's going for. Like they can be controlled more easily or something like that.
They're more easily controlled. And yeah, like we said, they freak out. And then I think they snatch Megan up, right? Her dad does. Because Dr. Hill's able to get back to him. He's able to hypnotize him with all of his, he has all of West's shit. You get that like comedy scene where his body can't like see, so he's like stumbling and running into things, and they get blood and they pour the blood into the tray.
Gross.
I love it. He's so good with like, I love his like severed head performance. It's so good. It's like, it feels, there's something about it that's very good. And yeah, they snatch up Megan and they beat up Dan.
And they take Megan to the morgue.
The morgue.
And Dr. Hill straps her down, takes all of her clothes off, and he
It's crazy. It's insane. His head is like, I like you. Like they discover earlier in the movie, by the way, that they're like, oh, Dr. Hill like is like very attracted to Megan. Like he has like bits of her hair and stuff. Like it's kind of weird.
So creepy. And he proceeds to sexually assault her with his head.
It's so gross with his like gross head and blood everywhere, and he's like moving her way, like yeah, and she's a Barbara Crampton, by the way, it has like a great horror movie scream. She's like screaming her head off as like yeah, like Dr. Hill is like, and but the movie is tasteful, you know what I mean? Like it because when it stops right when it needs to, you know, it doesn't need to go any farther than it does.
It definitely toes the line, but it definitely does not. I don't think it goes over the line. It's an intense scene though.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. When you first see it, yeah, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But it stops right when he's getting down to her groin area, you might say. And of course, enter Mr. Herbert West.
Herbert West is here to save the day.
The way that his entrance, the way that it's filmed is so funny. When he comes in, he's like, really, Dr. Hill? And he's like walking, like he doesn't care. He almost doesn't give a fuck about like Megan at all, really. Like he doesn't really like care about her all that much.
No, not really.
He like comes in, he's like, really, Dr. Hill? And he's like, I'm gonna steal your ideas. And I love when Wes is like, who's gonna believe a talking head? He's like, get a job in a sideshow. Another classic line. This is just one of those movies that just so many great lines. I don't have like every line memorized, but there's some good ones that I remember very well because they're just so funny. And yeah, he's like, they're basically toe to toe, you know, they're raring to fight each other.
And that's when we reveal that Dr. Hill has used the reagent to reanimate like a dozen corpses, all who have been lobotomized, so he can mind control them, I guess.
Dan is also there too, and he's able to get Megan free. But like, yeah, once all the corpses come out, you get just the incredible, chaotic, ensuing scene. It's so good. It's so out of control.
Nuts. Everyone's just fighting everyone. It's just shit's going everywhere.
The makeup on the corpses, where they have like, you can kind of like tell what happened to them. You know what I mean? Where like they have like their like they got shot in the face or something like that, and
there's like a burn victim.
Yeah. And like everyone's like, you like we said, like everyone's like fighting, and Megan's father is there too, and yeah, like people are getting thrown around and thrown at the wall, and you know, stuff is getting everywhere, and Megan's voice is able to kind of does something to her father, right?
He like, you know, he has one of those epiphany moments where he realizes that that's his daughter or whatever, and he takes the head of Dr. Hill and just starts to like squeeze the fuck out of it.
I know, it's so good. I love that too. Our character, the security guard, he like, remember the dean, he squeezes the head and then he throws it and it slams on the wall, and like right after it slams on the wall, the security guard looks in and he's like, oh no, and he runs away again. I love that he throws it and it just like sticks so like gross. This globby, gory shit on the wall. It's so good. It was fun watching the documentary when they were talking about the scene, because yeah, they were just talking about like, yeah, like it was about as chaotic filming it as it looked. Like we were just like going nuts. Like everything was like slapped together, and we just like all the gore and stuff is just random shit, you know, gallons of blood. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Absolutely insane. But Megan and Dan are able to get out of the room.
Oh wait, you forgot.
What did I forget?
You forgot West, he does an overdose on Dr. Hill's body with the reagent and he explodes. Not only does he explode, but his body like mutates to where he has like a entrail that almost serves as like a tentacle,
Yeah.
and it like wraps West around and it almost like pulls him in, and there's like fog everywhere, and that's so weird. His like chest explodes and like he becomes like a weird monster. It's so good. What, you didn't like it? You didn't like the monster entrails?
It looks good, but also really gross. But good. It looks good.
I love it. Anyway, right before Herbert West dies, he like throws his notes to Dan and he's like, here's all my notes and stuff. And he's like, okay. And he takes them and they both run out of like you said, they run out. They get out of there.
And they run into the elevator. There's another kerfuffle because reanimated corpses keep trying to get in. And again, Megan's just screaming her head off, and it's great. I mean, it's so good.
I know. It's crazy. Barbara Crampton's crazy. I don't know how she does it. She's in a lot of movies, like I said. She's still in movies today. She still appears in movies.
Good for her.
She still appears in horror movies. I know. She's awesome. She's one of those people that does like, well, that always does the horror convention shit too. You know, she's awesome. Yeah, like you said, like she's being choked. And Dan, he has to go get an axe and chop up the guy, and she dies. He's too late. The movie ends the way it begins, of course, which is genius.
And Dan, heartbroken, having just lost the love of his life, has reagent, and he pierces the skull of his dead wife, and we pull out. That's how the movie ends, right there.
They're not married.
Sorry, not his wife, his girlfriend, fiance. They're gonna get married as soon as he becomes a doctor. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. You're right. They're yeah, you're right. Yeah, and yeah, it like cuts to black and you can hear her scream. Just a perfect ending. You know what I mean? It's like Dan has witnessed many different examples of how the reagent just does not work like at all. He's seen every possible example, and yet he still needs to use it. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's Megan. You know, it's the love of his life, and he's like, you know, he doesn't care. You know, if there's a chance that he can bring her back to life after she just died, he's like, fuck it, you know, I might as well do it. I might as well try it out to see if it works, even though we know at this point that it just really doesn't work all that well for anyone. Yeah, I just love that ending. It's such a good, clean, nice ending, especially after the ensuing chaos before that incredible scene. I just love the way that movie ends, where it's just very heartbreaking.
I think Dan has the most intense arc out of anyone, because at the beginning, he's happy, he's in love, he's got everything going for him, and shit just doesn't go his way for the whole film.
Yeah.
And
the whole film. Yeah.
And he's so against the reagent at first, and he does everything in his power to try to stop it. And at the end, he becomes the very thing he didn't want to become. It's a pretty intense ending.
Yeah. Speaking of arc, we didn't really talk too much about the Dean Halsey arc. I love that guy's performance where he kind of begins as kind of like a dean. He's the dean of a college. You know, they're all the same.
Yeah.
He gets like the reagent, and then he dies and all this stuff, and his performance as just like this maniacal, crazy animal person is so good. The way that he's able to almost like kind of transform himself. I didn't mention that at all. That's another performance that is like really good and very convincing and very transformative.
So good. All right, Andrew. Final thoughts and rating?
It's a classic. You know, it's the ultimate movie, less than 90-minute 80s horror movie about people coming back to life. Just perfect. You know, the effects are great. I think the writing is really good. Like the writing is very tight and very funny. It's a very funny movie. It's basically a horror comedy, but it's funny because everyone takes everything very seriously, like in the movie, which makes it very funny. It makes it very rewatchable because it's really tight. It's just an extremely entertaining movie. And once again, like I said, the acting is just really good. Everyone in it is good. Everyone in it is able to deliver lines with tons of conviction. Everybody is very confident. Some say like it might be overacted. I don't think so. I think it's acted just the right amount. it's definitely at this point, in the conversation, it's definitely no secret that I love it. I think I'll give this, of course, a 9 out of 10.
I had a very good time with this film. I'm not a huge B movie fan. I mean, of course, you have classics like The Blob, which are always a good time. It's just been an area of cinema that I haven't really spent a whole lot of time in just because I've never had that much interest in. But I found the performances to be very dedicated. I mean, perhaps over the top, but it felt like everyone in this film like really cared about this film, and it really feels like everyone just gives 100% into this film, which just makes all the better. It makes the absurdities of it all the more absurd and funny. Of course, the special effects are above and beyond. I think the writing is very well done, very clever. I love a film that can get everything that it needs to do in under 90 minutes. I hate when films run too long. It starts at a manic pace and never really lets up. It's insane. It's intense. I love so many of the characters.
Every character amazing.
I really had a good time. I'm kind of going back and forth on this. So, one of the things that I decided in 2022, which is I would stop rating films as a 7 because it's just like it's really middle ground. And I rate a lot of films at a 7, which is what I was going to give this film. I think I'm going to give it an 8.
Let's go.
I think coming into this conversation, I was at a 6, but I think it's worth an 8. I think it's an 8.
It's lovely. It's a lovely movie. I will say if there's one thing that like is maybe a little bit distracting, it's good. I like it. It's the music maybe. In the opening credit sequence they played like the main theme. It's basically just the Psycho theme.
Sure is.
It's good. Like it's a good version of it, and I think like they say in the documentary that it's like an homage, which is fine, you know. I don't mind it, but it is a little distracting. What are you gonna do? If there's like maybe one criticism, which isn't even really a criticism, but
All right, y'all. Next week, we are going to be watching The Power of the Dog with 10 Oscar nominations. I'm very excited. This film has been my list for a long time. Andrew, I know you've seen one of her films before.
yeah, I've only seen one. I've seen The Piano. I watched that not too long ago.
And is it good?
Oh yeah, I loved it. Very beautiful movie. Very great music.
There you go. This will be a good time then.
I'm excited. Yeah, I gotta watch it for the Oscars. All the stars.
Thank you for listening, and you can find everything I do at AustinLuca12.
You can find me at Twitter at ADHarp24. I'm also on Letterboxd. Retro Andrew, RETR0 Andrew.
And you can find this podcast wherever you hear podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at With Nothing to Say Podcast. And please, if you have the time for exclusive content and early access, go to patreon.com/lifethroughfiction for all kinds of cool stuff. And thank you to our wonderful editor, Shannon Mitchell, for doing the greatest work of all in editing this podcast. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for all our supporters. And yeah, thank you once again for listening to the show.